For the man who famously said that the tech world respects innovation and not tradition, how difficult has it been to usher in change? We're speaking to Satya Nadella, the Global Chief Executive of Microsoft, and we of course will ask him on the Digital India Initiative, what it means for him, also the changing technology and the trends that are shaping our world around us. Thanks very much, Mr. Nadella, for being with us this evening. The context of this visit really is the Prime Minister's maiden trip to the Silicon Valley, and holds a lot of expectations for people in this space and stakeholders like yourselves. I want to first begin talking to you about this whole digital divide that exists in India and the whole Digital India Initiative. He wants to use this as a tool to bridge the digital divide. What do you think? I'm not going to ask you what is the scope, but as someone who's been there and done that and knows how things work, what do you think are the things that India needs to be wary of as they go into this whole Digital India Initiative?
I think fundamentally I sort of start from a perspective that technology is an important tool. Ultimately, it's about good governance, it's about the human capital and ingenuity of the people of India that's going to drive progress. So if you start with that perspective, you bring up one of the key issues, which is how do we make sure that the technology is democratized or there's access to technology that is uniform. The one project that I'm very excited about is work that we are doing to bring broadband internet connectivity to even the remotest parts of India. Because without access, which is affordable, not much can happen. So we're using, in fact, the TV white space, which is the spectrum between TV channels, working with local partners, in this case even the government.
That's right.
And we plan to sort of take it actually to 500,000 villages ultimately. But we started in a couple of villages in Srikakulam district of Andhra Pradesh, where you now have essentially broadband connectivity to schools.
That's right.
Once you bring broadband connectivity to a place like a school, you can have PCs, that they have Skype, people can start communicating, collaborating. That's how you can start conquering some of the issues of digital divide. And so I think when you think about Digital India, it's an initiative that will bring about ultimately even the solutions that solve the challenge of digital divide.
Fair point indeed, but I will fail in my duty if I don't talk to you about something that you're really throwing your weight behind, and that's of course local data centers that Microsoft is launching for the cloud services. That's something that you're very passionate about. How do you think the government and Microsoft are best placed to leverage something like this to bridge that digital gap? I mean, this is people say this is a turning point as far as Microsoft itself is concerned.
That's a great question, because I think what's happening with us is we're bringing world-class digital technology in the form of the cloud infrastructure and operating in India. In fact, it's actually a nice combination of, I think, the two programs the Prime Minister has, which is Make in India and Digital India.
That's right,
because we're essentially building our factories. In this case, they happen to be data centers that are going to operate in India, running this cloud at scale, and even giving capabilities for you to be able to reason over data. And so, for example, one of the programs, again out of Andhra, is they're taking all the data out of student enrollments from schools and using it and running machine learning predictive algorithms to understand who is going to drop out. Now, that ability to predict the dropout rates can then be used by the government to
retain those people back.
Exactly, take the scarce resource, the subsidies and other interventions to the students in schools that most need it. In fact, that's one just example. There are other places. For example, I think government of Maharashtra and the government of Tamil Nadu are also planning to use the cloud to just reduce their IT expense.
That's right.
And so to me, bringing this world-class technology makes it possible for Digital India to come to realize the efficiencies for all governments. And the people who will benefit from those services are ultimately the people of India.
You know, there's something very interesting that's been said about you. You've been in office now for over a year and 8 months, and they said Microsoft is a far more open company under you. You are present across service platforms, interconnected with different technology platforms. You're both on Android and on iOS. I mean, it was unthinkable that you'll be demoing on an iPhone, and, people, there's a lot that was said about it. There's a conscious attempt to be open. Are we going to see Microsoft pioneer this going forward? Is there going to be far more push, in the open source space, really?
I mean, Microsoft has always been
But you're doing it far more consciously than others have.
Quite frankly, that's probably right. We're more conscious of our platform company nature because fundamentally when you are a platform company, the goal is to bring multiple constituents, be it developers, be it IT, be it end users together and harmonize their interests. In that case, it's very important for us to be able to, work across the industry to really empower the organization and the people that we want to really help with technology. And so therefore, running across Android and iOS makes complete sense for us because we believe in the mobility of the experience. So when we think about a service like Office 365, we want to make it possible for any organization or any person to be able to use any device, anywhere, anytime, and get their work done. And that's what's driving our openness and our platform approach.
You said somewhere recently that, the tech world respects innovation and not tradition, and you're obviously trying to innovate a lot more. I have a different question to ask you here. While you innovate and while you pioneer innovation at Microsoft, do you believe at one level companies like yourselves that are just so big find it a little difficult to innovate, and which is why you are more open to embracing rivals, a Salesforce for that matter? Is that a logical conclusion to draw, you believe?
No, I think that any company in the tech business has to have innovation as their core agenda. Because I think the exciting part about being in the technology business is that every day you really have to be on the top of your game to stay relevant in the long term. And in our case, when I think about the spectrum of things that we have done even in the last year, from Skype Translate, where we've solved perhaps one of the most oldest human challenges of being able to in real time translate two people who are talking different languages, to what we're doing with the holographic computing with HoloLens, on two ends of the spectrum, or what Windows 10 represents as a massive departure, or what Office 365 in the cloud. So I feel innovation is really thriving at Microsoft. And of course, on top of our innovation, we want others to innovate. So if you take the Salesforce relationship or partnership, we want to make it possible such that Salesforce users can use Office as their front end, even if their data is in Salesforce or in Workday or in Dynamics. That approach is what we want to pioneer.
So what you're essentially saying is that the disruptive innovation is happening both at Microsoft, and you will be open to acquisitions and partnerships with companies which are far smaller and which are perhaps doing disruptive innovation.
Small, large, whatever, and as a platform company, we want to bring more innovation from us that even fosters more innovation. Just to kind of give you an example, we probably have one of the largest accelerators out of India. We've now had around 75 companies that we have helped birth out of our accelerator startups.
Right.
Zoomcar being one of them. And we've now, in fact, 20%, I just learned today, were started by women entrepreneurs, which is so exciting to see. And many of them, over 30 of those companies, went on to raise more than $500,000 of venture capital money. That's innovation that's happening on top of our platform. And to me, that's exciting to see.
While you say all of that, and before I wrap this up, I have to ask you this question. Is hardware a messy business to be in, and why are you still with Nokia? Look at every other company. Apple has a very walled garden approach to both, and they're very proprietary with both the hardware and the software. Is Microsoft still somewhere stuck in the middle? Because while you're a platform for developers, you still have a Nokia with you.
If you think about what I've said in the past, which is we're not in the hardware business just for hardware's sake. We're in the business to create categories, innovate from silicon to our applications. If you look at the Surface, we not only built a new category, we built a category now that's being imitated by others.
Yes.
So it is about, or take the HoloLens, which is we're bringing into the world a new form of computer where the input is your eye gaze and the output is a hologram. That requires us to reimagine from silicon to the applications. That's what we want to achieve. We want to do that with our phones. We want to do that with our two-in-ones. We want to do that with other forms of computers like the holographic computer.
Mr. Nadella, I will feel in my duty if I don't ask you the question. You consider the last word in technology, and there is a lot of startup that's booming in India, buzzing with action really. I have a different question to ask of you there. I'm not asking you is it a good or bad thing. What I'm asking you is that a lot of the startup in India is centered around the consumer internet space. A lot of people in the Valley that we've been speaking to say it has to move to enterprise. And perhaps one of the other things that worry people is that there's perhaps too much money chasing far too few companies. Do you think these are teething troubles? How do you really dissect the startup scene in India, which is buzzing a lot, and you understand that space?
I mean, I think ultimately any economy has to have a balance. It has to have a balance from what I would say conspicuous consumption to real productivity gains in the economy.
That's right.
That requires small and medium-sized businesses to thrive. So one of the things that I'm thrilled about bringing this cloud infrastructure to India is to make sure that small businesses all over India can have more productivity services available to them, which were never available before, so that they can be more competitive on a global basis. It's not just the startups. Startups can do disruptive new things, but even existing businesses who are getting more efficient, getting more out of their resources, I think is going to be hugely important for an Indian economy to continue to thrive and grow.
You're meeting the Prime Minister of India, and before I wrap this up, I know your nationality has no bearing on the big role that you play at Microsoft, but are there lessons that you draw by being an Indian?
I'm very proud of my Indian heritage and my, everything that I've learned and, the way I grew up in India, and I obviously have a lot of fondness for what's happening there, and I look forward to being someone who always cheers for India from the outside today, but I believe that Indian economy and the Indian entrepreneurial spirit and the human ingenuity is world class, and I look forward to the Indian society benefiting because of all of that.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.